This is such a controversial topic, terrorism. And the reason why terrorism is such a controversial topic, well, it's simply because terrorism has no actual definition. Yes, it has no actual definition. Not that it doesn't have meaning, but it doesn't have an actual definition because another man's terrorist is another man's freedom fighter, whether we like to admit it or not. And another reason why terrorism has a lot of complications surrounding it is because, well, you never can tell what the actual truth is because there's information warfare and we get to only hear one side of the story all the time. All the time we get to hear one side of the story, but not the whole story. But today, there's an even more bigger question to ask. And I believe we need answers. And that question is, will the war on terrorism ever be won? I know every war has an end, but terrorism seems to not have an end. Terrorism has existed for a very long time and it doesn't look like it's coming to an end because every day you turn on the news, you see a new terrorist group popping up, you see new form of extremism, you see different kind of radicals, and you tend to ask yourself, why does this keep happening and when does it end? Who is on the right side and who is on the wrong side? That's not really the argument because, like I said earlier, one man's terrorist is another man's hero. So now, the reason why terrorism has no actual definition is, and me explaining why one man's terrorist is another man's freedom fighter, is simply because let's look at a public figure like Nelson Mandela. When Nelson Mandela was fighting against apartheid in South Africa, he was regarded as a terrorist by some countries, including the United States of America. And if the United States of America calls anybody a terrorist, it is expected that everybody in the world should look at that person or that group as a terrorist, which is quite hypocritical to some extent because somebody like Nelson Mandela wasn't fighting against greater good. He was fighting against apartheid, and from his point of view, his people needed the freedom to exist, the freedom to belong into government, the freedom to participate in decision-making processes of his country. So that makes you ask, why was he regarded as a terrorist by the United States? On the United States part, you would say they are protecting the interest of the white people who are in South Africa, who were, as at then, the people who were the apartheid regime. And if you are a white person then, of course, you will feel, well, these are my people. There's nothing wrong in being biased. That one, I won't deny it. Everybody wants something to relate to. Hence why I feel the white people would support apartheid in South Africa then. However, there are some exceptions, of course, obviously, because some people don't like injustice. Naturally, that's how they are. They don't care what group they align with. They don't care what ideologies they share with other people. They just want to have peace and they don't discriminate, they don't hate, they just want a simple, quiet life, which is also fair. Now, let's go back to terrorism. Terrorism doesn't just pop out of nowhere. Yes, people are usually, indoctrinated into some certain ideologies. How they are indoctrinated is usually, not directly. It's usually, it's kind of nuanced when you want to talk about how people end up becoming terrorists. Because Most of the time, some of these radical groups and extremist groups believe that certain form of injustice has been done to them and they are fighting for their freedoms. Hence why they form groups or organizations that push out violence to achieve their aim. I'm not a supporter of violence. I don't encourage it. I discourage it. I don't think violence is the answer to every question or every political will. Violence is never the answer, because innocent people lose their lives, people lose their source of living, people lose their homes, people lose families. You have widows, orphans, and so on and so forth. But not to digress from the main topic, radicalization. How does it happen? So imagine you come to this world as an infant and then you grow up and you see people living better lives than you, and you're told it's because of your skin color, it's because of your gender, it's because of your ideology, it's because of a particular group of people that you belong to, hence why you cannot enjoy such privileges with others. Of course, it stirs something in you. You would want to change the system, and you would also want a quick solution to the problem. But like I said, violence is not the answer. So ask yourself, if you belong to any group and in that group you're being told that, well, you have to pick up arms, you have to harm people, you have to do terrible things to people to achieve a certain goal, just know that you're gradually being radicalized. You're gradually becoming an extremist. Extremism has to do with so much violence, so much hate and anger, which is something that the world doesn't need. Most especially now that the world is advanced in technology, in weaponry, in education, in globalization. Yeah, make sure that you are within the right cycle of people. Make sure you're listening to the right people. Don't just believe in people because you feel they look like you, or because you feel you share the same ideology, or because you feel you share some certain things. Know what to pick and what not to pick. And one thing is very clear: anybody encouraging you to commit act of violence to prove a point, you're not on the right side. Yeah, I'm saying this, you are not on the right side if you're being encouraged to pick up weapon or to harm people or to harm somebody because you don't share the same ideology, the same skin color, the same language, whatever. You are being radicalized, so take note of that. Now, the war on terrorism actually started, well, it started quite a very long time, but the first person to declare war on terrorism was the former United States President George W. Bush in 2001 after the 9/11 events, and blame were pushed to, well, blame was pushed to Arabs. Yes, it doesn't matter what type of Arab you are, as long as you are Arab, you are a terrorist. And this brings me to the topic of stereotyping. The dangers of stereotyping is you are trying to put innocent people in a category where they don't belong, and that is unfair. Putting innocent people in categories that they don't belong to is so unfair. If a particular group of people commits a crime, I think the best solution for humans is to sort out the bad eggs and dispose them and keep the good eggs safe. Yes, I know how hard that could be because that's an asymmetric form of attack, but it is still safer, and it makes you have a form of diplomacy and leverage over those people, rather than grouping them and stereotyping them to be a particular thing that not all of them believe in. So yeah, there's a grave danger when it comes to stereotyping, and I don't encourage it. I don't support it. I think we should understand and learn to respect people regardless of where they come from, what they look like, what they talk like, and the ideologies that they believe in. Yes, even if their ideologies are extreme, as long as they don't pose as a direct threat to us, I think it is fair to give them fair hearing. The world needs a lot of that, fair hearing. The media is very biased when it comes to stating facts. It's always one-sided. It's always, I don't know how best to explain it. And the media also has to understand that not everybody speaks the same language. So sometimes there's miscommunication due to language barrier. So yeah, there's that too. Now, let's talk about global terrorist networks. Some terrorist groups have been factionalized, if that's a word. I don't think that's a word, but some terrorist groups are breaking away from their main group. You see them forming subgroups. I don't know the best word to describe them, in other regions, in other parts of the world, which is also dangerous. Now, this brings me to the question: how do terrorists acquire such sophisticated technologies and weapons? This is a question that we should all be concerned about. What are the ethics of the military-industrial complex? Yes, because you keep on seeing terrorists with sophisticated weapons. What exactly is the work and the duty of the Interpol? What exactly has the ICC done to control and regulate such from happening? And what is the United Nations Security Council doing in regards to the spread of terrorism? And how has social media been able to de-radicalize and sensitize people from falling into the wrong side of the internet, from not listening to radicals and seeing their propaganda and adopting to such propagandas? And like I always say, and like I have said earlier, anybody encouraging you to use act of violence to prove a point is not on your side. That person is not your friend, and you are on the wrong side. So think about it. You don't have to prove a point with violence. However, humans have been associated with violence. Humans have been associated with achieving their aims through violent means. Yes. Throughout history, if you look at all the wars that have happened, all the conflict that have happened, right from time, it's always violence. So when does the violence end? Now, I think I have covered everything that needs to be discussed when it comes to terrorism. And now this brings me to my biggest curiosity. What exactly are the ethics of the military-industrial complex? Like, we haven't seen transparency in the military-industrial complex. Who are the defense contractors? What are they doing? Who are they supplying weapons to? And why are terrorists having sophisticated weapons? We need to know. Is it that there isn't a global regulating body, or countries are lagging behind when it comes to protecting themselves from non-state actors? In other words, terrorists. Non-state violent actors, to be very, very clear, because you can have non-state actors that are just good people. So when will human beings actually want to bring an end to chaos and violence against themselves? When? Human beings should minimize violence. Think about diplomatic means of resolving your issues rather than using weapons, and I promise you things will get better. Things will definitely get better if humans think more about how to be diplomatic to one another rather than how to conquer one another. Because at the end of the day, you're all humans and you all have rights. and you all claim you want freedom, you want peace, you want so much and so much and so much, but how do you claim the moral high grounds when you feel you are more superior to some certain people or a certain group because you don't share a common ideology, a common color, a common language, and so on and so forth? So think about it. And when we think about more diplomatic ways to resolve issues, I think that will be when the war on terror would end. But for now, let's keep on looking for solutions. And, well, people will keep on dying. People will keep on dying. People will keep on missing their limbs, their hands, whatever, in the act of war. And international law has been very lenient on so many issues happening globally. International humanitarian law isn't even regarded in most countries because you always see human rights being trampled upon. So let's come together as humans and me, an alien, to find solutions to the human problem. And this human problem is terrorism. So let's try as much as we can to end terrorism. Thank you. Bye bye. Latest gators.